Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show on this Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022. Thank you for tuning in. Well, I'll tell you, Nancy Pelosi's plane is on the way to Taiwan, I get from what I gather. Uh, Many old ladies fly into Taiwan almost every day. But why is this one different? Well, I'll tell you why it's different. Why I think it's different. My personal opinion is that the Chinese really want Taiwan. And we see tanks and armored vehicles pouring into, what was the name of that province? Well, let's get the chart started right here and take a look. We see, I'll replay this clip. There's the tanks pouring in. It says footage is now emerged on Chinese television showing how Chinese armed forces are pulling military equipment into Fujian province, the closest to Taiwan. And they're just pouring the tanks in as fast as they can into that region. So we saw this same kind of action a while ago when Russia was pouring tanks into the area of around Crimea and stuff, building up forces. It's not good, but my concern in all of this has to do with how this affects stocks, bonds, how it affects gold, how it affects silver, how it affects Bitcoin, and how it affects the financial markets. Because believe it or not, war does affect financial markets in an adverse way. Like I say, we were getting ready, I think, to start. The markets were slowly making recovery because of what the Fed's doing. This backdoor, hidden quantitative easing that the Fed's got going on, seem to have been recovering markets. We could be in for a very sharp. In fact, this could, just depends. You just don't know what's going to happen in a war type scenario with markets. You could, if markets are almost ready to have a downturn anyway, they're just barely hanging on. You give something a push, sometimes, it can cause a crash. If a war were to start between, say, Taiwan and China, because we already got a war going between Russia and Ukraine, and this war spreads out between Taiwan and China. It's like wars starting to break out here, there, and everywhere else. It's going to have a potential impact upon markets, and that impact can be absolutely huge. Let's take a look at the silver price. Looking at 20.27, and silver has downturned 7 cents. Basically, I guess what I'm saying to you guys is unforeseen occurrences coming along out of nowhere. Like, who would have saw this? Okay, we've had a bit of warning over a period of time that China has had their eye on Taiwan. We've known about that for a while. In fact, I've known about China and their buildup of islands. I've been talking about that for actually years in the South China Sea, which is part of this, But it kind of does take you a little bit by surprise when it finally starts to boil down to the point where you can see it could be getting almost ready to actually start, and these are big world-changing events, when you get very large-scale wars like this. Like if you look back in history, you can take a look at the Korean War, you take a look at the Vietnam War, you take a look at these are big events. So when Russia attacked Ukraine, that was a big world-changing event. You have to go all the way back to World War II to see events equal and parallel to what we're seeing, and I consider it was an absolute astronomically large event when COVID came into the scene back in 2020. In fact, that changed our world. And we all hope for what we call the new normal. Well, we haven't seen a new normal. We're always kind of like now waiting for the next shoe to drop. And right now, this next shoe is what's going on in Taiwan. You know, uh, we're all hoping it's just going to pass over and nothing's going to come of this. That's what we're really hoping for, because we want to get back to normal. We want some type of normalcy in our lives. We don't want a continuation of this, what they call interesting times. I don't want no more interesting. I've had enough interesting. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're looking at a silver price of $20.29 today. It's down 5 cents. Let's take a look at gold. Gold is up $8.30. It's quite a little bit of a differential there between gold and silver. Generally, we see silver move with gold, but gold is taking a little pop. And this is probably because of a fear trade right here. About an $8 right there, you know. Fear trade. They always run to precious. They start to run to precious metals, and the first one's gold. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Hey, you know what? I'm a little bit frightened. The world could go to war. Maybe I better have some gold. You know, not everybody thinks that way, but enough people think that way that could drive it up. Well, so far $8. You know, okay, it's not a lot, but it could be the start of something. Especially if a lot more people start thinking the same way. You know, thinking, hey, I gotta have something to hedge against this crazy financial system that could spiral out of control, either deflation or inflation, most likely inflation, because I can't see them letting the whole thing just peel down and deflate ever. They're going to have to keep constantly, because that's the way it fundamentally works, guys. It works on increasing credit. You got to keep constantly expanding the credit to pay off the old debt. You can't pay off the debt. I mean, I know they keep playing these games like, okay, we're going to tighten our belts. We're going to balance a budget. You can't balance a budget in this type of credit-based system. You have to constantly keep drawing out new debt to pay off the old debts, because that's the way it fundamentally works. Okay, so let's take a look at cryptocurrencies today. We're looking at 1,050. That's 1,050,000,000,000. That's the entire industry. And we're looking at a Bitcoin price of 22,787. Let's take a look now at the stock market, and what you're seeing is this 291 points down is all based on Pelosi's flight over there to Taiwan. That's basically what's, I think, driving the market today, is this tension in China over Taiwan and the flight of the airplane that's, I guess, en route right now. Anything could happen. Seriously, war could break out. Or maybe not. But it's not a good sign, those tanks moving in. I'm just going to say that. Let's take a look now at crude oil. 93.53. It's down 36 cents on the day so far for crude oil. Move index, $20, 120.50. So the move index has creeped up just a little bit. Considering how volatile the system is out there, this move index should be about 240. Should be twice as high as it is. Considering, you know. Okay, bonds and rates today. We're looking at yields are climbing today. On the U.S. 10-year, it's 2.63 today. It's up 3.3 basis points. And the U.S. 30 years at 2.92, and it hasn't moved much. Roughly half a basis point, 4/100ths of a basis point. Let's take a look now at the U.S. dollar index at 105.79, and the dollar is climbing a little bit. So basically, when you see this dollar index, really, the DXY is an awful good indicator of which one's winning? Inflation or deflation? You know, and if you see the dollar index climbing, you know that deflation is a little bit stronger that particular day. You see the dollar index falling, you can say, well, probably inflation is probably winning a little bit today, you know. And another good indicator for this is oil, the oil price, you know, you see as well as the dollar. So basically it's everything around the petrodollar, surrounds the petrodollar, because oil and the US dollar index are both indicators of the petrodollar itself. And you know, the petrodollar's been eroded a lot, but it's still there. Ever since Kissinger worked feverishly to get the petrodollar in place, and why they had to get that petrodollar in place is because they took the dollar off the gold standard in 1971, and basically the world reserve currency needs support. It needs to have something backing it. Otherwise, you've got a fiat-based monetary system for the whole world. And fiat-based monetary system, everybody knows they always fail in a hyperinflation. So what they did is they took us off the gold standard. And so when they did that, all these other fiat currencies, which derive their value from the dollar, were all broken free from anything pegging them to anything of value. And so that means that they were all going to hyperinflate. And they knew that. So they said, okay, well, we've taken it off of the gold standard. Now we need a new standard, and the new standard is going to be oil. You can only buy oil with dollars. And so they had a security there. A base, a fundamental of the dollar had a loose peg. Wasn't a tight peg to oil, but it meant that you could only buy oil with dollars, so the dollar was based in oil. It was worth oil, basically. And now what we've had is East, the BRICS nations, have been working feverishly to break that peg. And, you know, now what used to be a strong cord that hold the dollar to oil, or like a big steel cable, what they've done is they've cut all the cords, and all that's left is a little thin strand holding it now at this point that can be easily broken. And so that's where we stand with the petrodollar. The petrodollar has been eroded now. It's still there, but it's so eroded that it's so weakened, in such a weakened position. And once that petrodollar standard breaks, so that the dollar's not tied to anything at all these other fiat currencies that are tied to the dollar, basically that make up the DXY, you know, there's a whole bunch of them, fiat currencies, the dollar being the strongest, they're all basically floating free. They're all worthless. And once the dollar's worthless, then they're all worthless at the same time. And that would be a crisis unparalleled that would look for a new global currency reserve standard that would have some value backed by something. You know, what's curious about all this is gold is a fundamental, it's been the fundamental backing currencies through all of history gives them value. You know, so we've seen the East store an awful lot of gold away. And in the form of 1 kilogram size gold bars. You know, in fact, they've drug most of the gold, and an awful lot of gold has been reapothecated over to the East. They've been paying for it. They've been buying it. For years there, China and Russia has been stacking gold away, you know what I mean? And I just can't help but think this is part of a greater plan, you know, between these countries who have formed pacts together, you know, over in the East. To take down and form a new global trading system and stuff, you know, and this whole, everything that's going on, you know, it's probably all linked in together. Anyway, thank you guys for listening to my show. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the very next episode. And you guys have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.